What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Sec Tech Podcast, where we talk about all things in tech, in the tech space. I am so excited that you're joining us. My name is Matt. Here with me always is our co-host, Kenn Williamson. Kenn, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Good. You enjoying this spring weather?
Yeah, I let it stick around as long as it can. I mean, here where we're at, when it gets to be full summer, it's going to be very, very hot and probably very muggy. And so I just let it go as long as it can.
Yeah, I completely agree. I am an avid golfer, and there's nothing better than a sunny 80-degree day. Now, a sunny 100-degree day is not what you want. So I agree with you, man. We just need to stay in this little pocket forever. You know, I guess that's why people love the West Coast. But here we are in Oklahoma, another episode of the Sec Tech Podcast. I'm actually really excited about this one because every now and then, you know, Kenn and I, we love interviewing people and talking to people in the tech space. But we're developers. We love what we do. And so every now and then, honestly, we just want to be developers and we just want to talk as developers. And so we do not have a guest today. Instead, we are calling this episode Dev Corner, where we're going to talk about all things in the dev space. Now, if you're not a developer, though, this is still going to be a great episode for you as we talk about things like boot camps. Should you hire somebody coming out of a boot camp? What are these boot camps doing for developers to get them ready? And many other topics. So stick around. It is going to be an amazing conversation. Kenn, let's kick this off with this right now. You know, let's just start off with boot camps because we both came out of boot camps. I came out of one coming out of a university. It was kind of tied to the University of Texas. It was ran through Trilogy Education. You know, it was a little 6-month boot camp. You went through one that's a little bit more of a standalone franchise, correct?
Yeah, I went through one that's called Coding Dojo. It's a 16-week boot camp, and it was designed more for people that are already working but looking to change careers. Like, it was every day, really intensive, not really like spread out, over a number of months. So. Yeah, I think that the boot camps are a great topic. It's really a question of do these people have the skills necessary when they're coming out? What is a boot camp teaching? And so I'm excited to talk about it. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so I went through one that was kind of part-time. It was like 6 months, so a little bit longer than yours, and kind of aimed towards similar people who wanted to change careers, were working full-time. And so, yeah, let's just get into it. I mean, my experience coming out of a boot camp was great. You know, I thought that in those 6 months, I think I came out of that boot camp feeling like I wanted to be a developer. I thought that I understood the pattern of problem solving that was going to be required. I understood some of the architecture of programming that was required. But I have a couple thoughts, but I want to turn it over to you first. Would you say, so I'll just kind of frame it like this. Would you say that right now in 2023, if you want to be a software engineer, a developer, should you go through a boot camp?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, my sense is that, to me, the pathways to being a software developer are likely either being self-taught, but the big problem with that is, how do you demonstrate your skills to a possible employer, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other option is the boot camp, which has a lot of pros and cons. And then, some people are still doing a 4-year degree in computer science or computer engineering or something like that. And really, I am not as excited about something like that. It feels like, for the person, they're spending an awful lot of time learning things that aren't really going to be helpful for their career.
Yeah.
And I mean, really the pace is very slow. So, and you talk to a lot of businesses and they say, well, the computer science that you learn in college is loosely related to computer science as it's practiced when you're in the tech industry. So no, I think that the boot camps are a great pathway forward. I think some of the pros that boot camps have is that it gives you some structure. If you're trying to learn for yourself, you can easily get discouraged. You don't really have a whole lot of resources, although there's more and more every day online. But the boot camp really provides that structure. If you're going to one that has a good reputation, that can help you get a job. A lot of them will have career services, which is really helpful getting your first job. Once you've worked in the industry for a year or two, it's really not that hard to find something else.
Yeah.
But breaking in, getting that first job, especially if your background really isn't in tech, can be very difficult. And so, I think that the boot camps are great. I think there's probably quite a bit of variation between them, and finding the right one is probably a big key. But overall, I would say it's a really great pathway to becoming a software developer, software engineer, because you're just really focused on the skills that you need for the job. Like I said, you have that support network, you have those career services. So it really just gives you kind of a leg up over somebody that was self-taught, while at the same time, you said 6 months, I said 16 weeks. If we try to get computer science degrees, we're talking 4 years, maybe 5 years, so it's really a big difference as far as your time to actually becoming productive and getting a job.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with you. If somebody, and so I actually tutor students for the boot camp that I came out of. Right. And so a couple of days a week, I take some 4-hour blocks and I meet with students and I just teach them, about what's going on. And so that gives me, I feel like, a really good perspective into just the nuance of, the students within the boot camp. And here's what I would say. Anytime, I do think boot camps are the best path forward in today's right now. And the reason why is because of what you just said. You can go self-taught and that's all fine. But the only hard thing with that is that, there might be a component of what it's like to develop in a real world setting that you're missing because you didn't really have a map, right? And so I went and learned JavaScript, and I learned CSS, and I learned HTML, and I learned how to Dockerize and create a database, right? But I never learned how to deal with MySQL Server. I don't even know what it is, right? And so, then it's going to be kind of tough when if you land in a job maybe that's a little .NET heavy or whatever, it can be kind of tough when you haven't been exposed to that. And I do think what the boot camps do well, certain ones, the good ones, is they help you touch on multiple different areas within development. Now, what they don't do, and here's what I try to help people understand, they don't go deep. And so you and I have a very different experience from a lot of people in that we kind of got jobs right away coming out of the boot camps that we were part of. I believe you kind of came on with SecTech a little after, right?
Yeah, it was like a month after I graduated.
Same. And I would say that a large part of why, so when I see students who come out of a boot camp and they get jobs and the ones that don't, the one difference, and it's the difference every single time, is that the ones who did put in work outside of just the boot camp to go deeper into the topics, right? Because you can touch on React for 2 weeks, but that's not really enough time for you to be job ready in React. You kind of need to go a little deeper. And even then, I still felt like, even when I came on, even though so for me, I was doing about 30 hours a week of the boot camp, and I was still putting in about 25, 30 hours a week outside of the boot camp just to get ready. And I still came in feeling like I needed a little bit more, when I landed the job. And so that's the one big difference I would say is, if you want to go the boot camp route, absolutely, that's the best route, but you can't rely on these boot camps to teach you everything.
Yeah, I completely agree. right when I graduated, it was the first class in Tulsa for this boot camp, and I think they've since left Tulsa, but I was interviewed by a paper in Oklahoma City, and they had asked me about the experience, you know, and what I had said then, and completely agree with you. You get out what you put in.
Right.
It's exactly like you say. They touch on a lot of topics, and hopefully the good ones, they really arm you with the knowledge of how to figure stuff out, how to go deeper. How do I learn? Like, I have this knowledge about React. How do I figure out how to do something specific? You know, what's the process for going about to, you know, make some sort of widget in React, you know? And that, I think, exactly what you're saying is the successful people take that knowledge, and while they're in the boot camp or afterwards, while they're looking for a job, they spend a lot of time honing the specifics, building things, figuring out how, like, I want to make X, Y, Z. How do I do that? You know, and so it's something where you have to put the work in. And if you're expecting to show up to the boot camp, do the minimum, and then land a, you know, 80, 100, 120K job, that you're dreaming. You're dreaming. That's never going to happen. You know, one thing that I think the boot camps do that I don't particularly like is I feel like they overpromise what you can expect when you get out of the boot camp as far as compensation. You know, developers are well compensated. I mean, there's a wide range, but in general, pretty well compensated professionals. But if you have no tech experience and you have this boot camp, coming out and expecting to make
you're not making 90.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
High 5, low 6. It's not reasonable.
Right.
Like no one is going to take a chance on you at that price. At least not in the Midwest, not where we're at. You know, maybe things are different in California, Seattle, you know, Washington, you know, or on the East Coast. But where we're at, you know, you really want to expect more mid 5 figures starting out, which is still a great living.
Sure.
Like, I mean, it's not like this is peanuts that they're offering you. But is one thing that frustrates me a little bit is that they kind of overpromise that, and then if you're not putting in that extra effort, like you say, I don't even think you can expect that. I think that you can expect that you're going to struggle because you're going to go into these interviews. They're going to ask you specific questions about how would you, I want you to work in React. We're working on this application. How would you do this? You know, and if you haven't built some stuff, it's going to be very difficult for you to give a good answer to that question. You know, just the high level, I know how React works. I know create React app, you know, CLI. That's not going to be enough. You know, I was trying to solve this problem. I did step 1, I did this, step 2, I did this. Here were some problems I ran into. Here's how I overcame them. You know, that's what an interviewer is going to be looking for. So right. Anyway, yeah, I completely agree. I think you're right on with the boot camp is something that you get out what you put in. If in addition to going to the boot camp, you're going on your own time, learning more, building more, then I think that there's a high likelihood you'll immediately or very soon after graduating get hired and start working.
Yeah, I agree, because it's not like the demand isn't there.
No.
You know, like, I mean, my, you know, there's jobs all over the place, you know, but yeah, you got to go earn it. You know, you got to go earn it. It's like everything else in life. And I would say for employers, when you're interviewing and you're looking at these boot camp grads, I would say a couple things. One, I do think, you know, even as a developer, I'm going to say, I think employers should stick to their guns. I don't think as an employer, because these boot camps are promising these guys, you know, those high 5s, low 6s. I don't think as an employer, if somebody's coming out of boot camp with no experience, you should offer that, right? I think it's perfectly okay for these employers to bring people on and work them in slowly at reasonable prices. And also think though for if I was an employer, I would be asking those kind of questions. I would really be trying to make sure that they understand conceptually what's happening. That will tell me coming out, if they're coming out of boot camp, if they put in that extra work. And then I also think it's important, if I was an employer, to be just make sure that they have some resources to get a little caught up when they come into the job. So if you are looking for a developer who's new, which I don't really know why you would be in this situation, but if you were like, hey, I want somebody with no experience who can hit the ground running and start producing quality A+ code, like for, sprint zero. Okay. That's, you probably got to, maybe equip them a little bit more. I don't know if that's, coming out of boot camp, if that's going to be, your best play, but I do think, boot camp grads, coming out, give them some resources that kind of help understand your technology, some Udemy videos, plural, there's so many different things out there, but, put them on a little course to develop a little bit, even within your system. I think that it's working really well all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah, and another good resource for boot camp grads getting hired is, mentorship from people that have been in the industry for a while. There's no substitute for working on a project, actually trying to deliver working code in working software, and needing someone to help guide you. I think that's the best pathway forward, because the reality is that you can watch 100,000 videos, but until you start writing code, you really haven't applied anything. Yeah. And people in general learn from application. They learn from experience. You even if we could somehow download every detail of this stuff, it's like, how do you even know which are the right details to pick for any particular problem? It's that you need to be able to understand the process of figuring these things out, which is what the boot camp can do. But then once you have that, you need to figure a few things out, use those tools and develop them more. So no, I'm in complete agreement. I think the boot camps are great. If I had a 18 to 20 something year old person come to me and say, hey, software development sounds really cool, how do you think I should get into it? I would say, find a good boot camp that looks good to you, that sounds good. Ask around, find out if this is someplace that they're placing a lot of people after they graduate. If they are, just go for it, and it's one of those things where, especially for a young person, there's always going to be demand for developers. So you can go and you can work on development for a few years. And then if you decide, hey, this isn't my calling, I want to do something else. Well, that's just another skill that you have in your back pocket. And as it turns out, almost every industry now has a place for somebody that knows that industry and also knows how to develop. Yeah. Because everybody's using tech. Every company is becoming a tech company. Right. And so, if you're coming out and, you decide that you want to become a baker afterward, it's like, well, being able to design your own bakery website and not having to outsource that would be a huge benefit. Or I mean, and it could really apply to anything. So,
well, I mean, just simply being able to, there's so many different websites too, where you can pick up work as a developer, 10 hours to complete this little task. And maybe, you get $25, $35 an hour. I mean, it's a great side income for a lot of people as well. You're going to make your money. There's ways that you're going to make that money back that you put into that boot camp, right? Absolutely. And I love what you said about mentorship. You're so right about that. I really felt like my first year within our company, you did a really good job. I mean, you and I met a lot, and you really helped me understand a lot of nuances of problem solving and different things like that. So you're absolutely right. Having that mentorship, somebody there is huge and definitely something that everybody should be doing. And that's another thing for employers, pair these guys up, make sure that they have somebody that they can lean on and that's going to help them. And that's only going to help your product. It's going to help your velocity as a company. It's going to help you keep moving. It's going to develop that person a lot faster. So yeah, I love all of that. Okay. Next question that I have is kind of along those lines. This is something that I hear again, so as somebody who tutors a lot for students coming out of the boot camp, this is always the number one question I hear from a student when they're about a month away from graduating. They always, they're about a month away. I know because of the week that they're on. And I'm like, hey, where are you at in the job process? I hear this every time. Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to apply for jobs. Okay, what do you think you need to be ready? And the answer is always, I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm good enough yet. Like I'm ready, And it's a good, and I understand where it's coming from, right? We call it in development, we call it imposter syndrome, right? And it's such a real thing. But here's my question to you: how ready do you think you should? How ready should you feel before you start? If you're going to walk into a job, I just graduated from boot camp, maybe even have a year experience, whatever. I'm looking at a job, and the job is. Okay, they're working with React. Okay, I know a little React. I feel pretty good about what that's asking. Okay, creating some APIs. Okay, yeah, a little bit. And then .NET. Well, I don't know anything about .NET, So a lot of people that I've experienced, a lot of people breaking in, they'll go, I can't apply for that job. I know nothing about .NET. What are your thoughts, man? What do you need to be ready before you start actually going in for jobs?
So maybe this is a hot take, but I don't think that you're ever ready for going into a job. Every company has nuances to their environments, to their processes. There's always going to be stuff to learn. We do consulting. I go and consult with companies and I've been doing this for a long time, and there's still new stuff to learn, about the space of tech now has gotten too huge. There's no one knows it all, and no one really even knows half. So my advice is, just start. I mean, it's so, people ask me similar stuff about, I have 3 kids, and they say, Ken, how did you know you were ready for kids? And I say, well, I was not ready. It's something where if you stop and you say, I want to wait until I have all my ducks in a row, I'm in the perfect situation, I know everything there is to know about raising a child. Yeah. Let me tell you, it's never going to happen. And it's the same thing with jobs. Good advice that I got was that if you meet 80% of the so-called requirements for the job, I would apply. And if they say that you need 3 years experience and you have 1 year, I would apply. If they say you need 1 year and you're fresh out of boot camp, I would apply. It's something where the worst they can say is no. Yeah. The worst that's going to happen is that you're going to get into the interview, if you get an interview, and you might have a bad experience. Like you might feel like, oh man, I was not ready for that. But that's a learning experience. That'll help you. And the other thing is that there are so many resources for learning about a particular technology. And it's almost never, I'm applying for a job today, I'm interviewing tomorrow, right? It's usually I'm applying for a job today, I'm going to get a call back in a week and have an interview in 2 weeks. Well, listen, in tech terms, 2 weeks is a long time. Whatever you're lacking out of that, you can research it. Right. And that's what I would say to do is, there's tons of resources on all of these tools. Like you want to learn .NET, you can download .NET, you can start a project, you can try to get something going. I'm a big proponent of creating little example apps. It doesn't have to be complicated, just a database with a few tables, a couple of controllers, a UI, some workflow. At SecTech, we use products and orders a lot. We say, well, lots of companies have products and those products get ordered by people. So you want to make an example app to test out a new technology, make a ordering app that you have, You have customers, you have products, you have orders, and then you just build that up so that a customer can make an order for a few products, And once you have all that together, then, I'm not going to say, obviously you're not an expert, but
right.
you have enough experience that you can say with confidence, hey, I've looked at this, I've worked on it a little bit, I feel confident that I can go into your company and add value.
Yeah.
The worst thing to do is to overthink it. If you're like, oh, I meet, 15 out of 20 of these so-called requirements for the job, I better not do it because I've never worked with SQL Server. I've only worked with MySQL. It's like, well, those technologies are super similar.
Right.
Like there's a lot of overlap. Or I've never used Fast API in Python. I've only used Flask, or I've only used Django or something. And it's like, no, a lot of those skills will transfer over. It's not something that or my experience is in .NET 3 instead of .NET 7. It's all of these little things. People get themselves tripped up and they're worried about it. Listen, just apply. You just have to get out there. The worst they can say is no. The worst that can happen on the interview is that you have a bad interview experience. And let me tell you what, that's likely going to happen either way.
Right. No, 100%. I love everything that you're saying. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the worst thing you can do is just not do anything. Do you want to know if you're ready for this job? Go do an interview, because you'll learn really quickly. If you're sitting in an interview and you're like, I know, like React, and then you get an interview and you start getting asked React questions, you don't know the answer, that's just good feedback for you. Okay, maybe I don't. Maybe I need to go back. Maybe I need to learn some things, right? And I don't think that's that might be a hot take, but it's just a good take, right? Because good takes over hot takes, right? It's so true. A good example, I didn't know, I never learned C# when I came on at SecTech. We use a lot of C#. Guess what? It's not that, it took 2 weeks to kind of understand some of the basics, at least, and then, I think so much of it's no different than any other job, right? It's all about environment. Okay, I'm going to go into this job where I'm going to use C# and I don't know it. Now, I did interview for one other place before I came on SecTech. And I didn't take that job because when I came on, it was a marketing agency. They used Elementor and WordPress to do a lot of sites, a lot of landing pages type thing. It wasn't going to be too complicated, but, good work. And what they told me, I went in and I said, okay, well, I didn't learn WordPress, my boot camp. I was just coming out of the boot camp, but I can learn it. And I said, that's great. But we're a marketing agency. We expect output right away. Okay, well, I didn't take the job because I can't deliver right away. I don't even know your technologies, And so when we were having the discussion, they were saying, hey, we're going to need you ready right away. I just went, okay, well, that might not be the best environment for me to be in, given that I don't really understand the job, right? It was going to be a job where I was going to need to learn, kind of in the environment, and they were looking for somebody who didn't need to learn right away in the environment, right? So, okay, well, you know what? That's not going to be the right path there. And so, but that's every job. Every job that, I've ever had that you're ever going into, it's the same. What are the needs of, the business? And, can I meet the needs, or can I develop quick enough to meet the needs of the business with a shared understanding that there might be a knowledge gap in the beginning? If that's there, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, I will say, employers, you gotta stop creating jobs asking for 3 to 5 years of experience on these junior developers. I mean, surfing jobs on LinkedIn is maybe one of the, or wherever, is maybe in the dev space, sometimes can be one of the most unrealistic spaces. I mean, the amount of times you see junior developer compensation for somebody who has 6 years of experience is a little too high still within our industry. That's got to come down. It's got to come down. You got to realize what you're getting when you're creating a job for these employees. Software development is not an area where, you know, it's like any, I would say it's like any other job, but I would say what makes software development unique is that, as you said, there's nuances to environment. And as an employer, you can't just expect software engineers to walk in day one. Even us with experience, if we change jobs, we walked in day one, I mean, we'd be fine, but like there's going to be a lot of little things we got to pick up. So you can't really expect that, you know, like first day, it's like, here's my PR with, 15 points, added to it. Like, so there's a nuance there, but I completely agree. You should feel, if you're 80%, is that what you said? 80% of the way, you should go for it. I completely agree.
Yeah. Brent, that we interviewed him before, works with us. He says that on average, it's 6 months for a developer to get up to speed. And so, and I think that that's probably pretty close, and touching on another point you made is experience. Truly, I hate years of experience as a indicator of seniority. Like, and I won't name any names to protect the guilty, but like I worked with a guy when I first started in tech, and he had 15 years of experience on the job. And we worked together for about 6 months. And in that 6 months, I didn't see him produce a single line of usable code. And, I'm sure that he interviews great. He's like, oh yeah, I do this, do that, do the other thing. But when it came down to it, he didn't have the skills and he didn't have the confidence to actually deliver, even though he had been in the industry for 15 years. And the reality is there are a lot of people out there that have 6 years, quote unquote, of experience that still don't really know and just kind of float from job to job until they, until it becomes apparent that they can't produce, and then they have 5 years of experience, so it's easy for them to go to the next one and then to the next one. And so this is something, maybe this is a hot take, but I think years of experience is a terrible indicator of how good you are as a developer. There are people that are coming straight out of boot camp that are probably better than people that have been on the job 5 years, and there are probably people that have been on the job for a couple of years that are better than a 15-year developer. So it's I don't know. It's just, you got me all riled now because it frustrates me so much, and it just like limits these companies that are looking for talent, who need people. Your dev team is dying. Your dev team needs more resources. The worst that can happen is that you bring somebody on that has less experience, you pay them less money, they don't work out after 6 months or a year, and it's like, okay, well, are you really out that much? Rather than your dev team struggling for a year, you hire someone with the amount of experience that you think they should have, and then they can't produce.
Right. Right. No, 100%. I love what you're saying. Yes, years of experience is crazy, because software engineers are not created equal. And this is something I learned in my boot camp. We had this guy in our boot camp. It's very similar to you. I know you viewers, you guys don't know, Kenn is an insanely good developer. Very, very good. Very, very beyond his years in terms of experience. And that's because different minds just can see it differently. I mean, I had this, we had this guy in our boot camp. He could read a page of documentation and just like, I get it, and just go do it. I can't do that. You have to show me an example. I have to sit there on YouTube and watch somebody code it out to understand. I mean, it's just, everyone's brain works a little differently, and there's going to be different things, there's going to be different nuances to that person that's going to either benefit or maybe hinder them. And look, that doesn't mean like I don't feel like I can be a software engineer, and I don't feel like I'm not a good software engineer. It's just some people pick it up differently, and some people are going to pick it up a lot better. And so, it's crazy because I got a job before, the guy in my boot camp did. And I knew he was 10 times a better developer than I was, now he ended up getting a great job, really good job, and super happy for him, for that. But it's just important, to understand that, experience, years does not equal talent when it comes to software engineering. Like you said, there are people who have done this for a very long time, but maybe they knew a version of software engineering back when, in a different time, and, they have a specialty maybe in some legacy software, and they're coming into a modern design and they just don't know. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean you hire them just because they have 15 years of experience, when there's a boot camp grad that has that modern design experience that's actually going to contribute faster than your guy of 15 years.
No, I think you're hitting on a lot of great points. Something else. Oh, no, I think I might have forgotten it. Oh, well, anyway, the experience is a terrible indicator. What is a good indicator is a portfolio. So what I would... let me back up. So I wanted to go off the point that you kind of alluded to there, which is that tech moves so quickly that 5 years of experience doesn't necessarily mean 5 years of experience that's right. Applicable, right? And so your example was great. That this guy had 15 years of experience. Maybe he was working on a version of the language, a version of the software that was 2 or 3 versions back from the one that your team is working on. Well, you hope that knowledge transfers, but it may not. And the other thing is that when you're a software developer, you have to have a hunger to learn.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've noticed that sometimes more experienced developers don't have, which is the ability to rethink the way that you think things should be done. And you kind of see them get set in their ways. They see a problem. They've solved similar problems in the past, and they're like, oh, I know how to solve that problem. But maybe now in 2023 or beyond, there's new tools. There's new ways to solve the problem that maybe is doing it better. And so, yeah, I don't want to harp on it too much, but it always frustrates me that, and it's just, what really frustrates me is the level of importance that they place on it. Like, if you don't have the right number of years, they won't even talk to you. And it's like, that is so silly. But anyway, sorry, I kind of
we're going to pivot into everything you just said, because I love what you just said. You talked about a hunger to learn. And this is the other topic I wanted to talk about. And you also said something there that was really important when you were talking about the guy with 15 years. He didn't have the confidence. Confidence is so important as a software engineer, to have confidence in what you're typing. And I can't tell you how many times I meet with students, and we get there and it's like, okay, I have to solve this problem. Cool. Show me your code. I haven't written any. Why? Well, I don't know what to do. Right. And it's like, okay, well, you're never going to learn. It's funny. We like to think software engineering is like this compact, precise bubble, but it's really not. It's anything in life. You want to learn how to run if you want to go run a marathon, guess what you got to do? You got to go outside and run, right? You want to learn how to solve this problem. Guess what? You got to write some code and just try. It's maybe it's wrong. Maybe, it's completely wrong. But until you start typing code, you're just never going to know, right? But the thing that I see so much is confidence. Why am I not putting code on paper? Not paper, but why am I not putting code into my editor, right? It's confidence. So many times it's like, I don't feel confident enough to write anything, right? And that is one of the biggest barriers I see with newer developers, and myself included, there for a while, where you get in this cycle where it's like, I don't know, therefore I'm not going to do. I don't know how to solve because I'm not doing. I'm not going to ever figure out I'm not going to figure out the answer because I have no context to the problem, and you just go round and round, right? And so what do you think for a newer developer or somebody within a company that's like, hey, I don't have confidence because I feel like I don't know, like I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to get to these problems that we're going to solve. What would you say for that person is the most important step to take in really getting that confidence up, you know?
My advice is don't overthink it. Mm-hmm. You know, the beauty of the software development space is that we're working with bits and bytes. We're working on the computer. You know, there is a lot of room for trial and error in software.
Yeah.
You know, but before I was in software, I was a mechanical engineer. I did compressor stations, and you know, that's something where they spend a lot of time planning and thinking through things, and they have to get the thickness of the pipes and the strength of the valves, and every single detail has to get managed precisely before they even break ground.
Yeah.
Right. And software development is not like that.
Right.
I can try 10 different ways and none of them work, and I can do an 11th one and it still really hasn't, you know, I haven't spent anything. I haven't bought a pipe yet. You know what I mean? And the reality is, the funny thing is that even in engineering, they would spend 6 months to a year planning everything out, break ground, start putting stuff together. They find out, oh, this isn't going to work, and then they have to problem solve on site anyway. And then you have as built plans that happen after the fact. After we actually designed everything, we still made changes, we had to get new plans to reflect those changes. So just put something down, you know, and a good resource for that is every problem that's being that you need to solve, a similar problem has already been solved. Just go and look for the examples. There are tons of people that really enjoy putting up blog posts, putting up examples, putting up example projects on GitHub. All of these things, you just, you know, Google search them, search GitHub, find something that somebody has done that's similar to what you're doing, and then use that as a basis to work off of. You know, but the worst thing you can do, exactly what you're saying, is you can hesitate to the point where you're paralyzed. Yeah. You know, and you want to overthink. Well, I don't know how to solve it, and so I just keep thinking and just keep thinking. And it's like, no, stop thinking and just start with something. And here's something that happens a lot in computer science, is that problems will have circular dependencies. Like, in order to build the UI, I need to know what kind of data I have. Well, in order to know what kind of data, or API, and then in order to know the API, I need to know the data. Well, in order to know the data, I need to know the UX. What is the user expecting, right? And in order to know the UX, I need to know the API and need to know the data, and it's circular. Well, when you're in that situation, which is so incredibly common, you just start somewhere, whatever feels good. Start with a UI, start building out some controls, right? That will lead you into how to build your API. Yeah. Or me personally, I usually start on data, because that's where it makes the most sense to me. I say, okay, what is the objective? What data are we trying to capture? What data are we trying to manipulate? Let's start with some data, and then that will naturally flow into, okay, now I need a way to access that data. Let's build an API. Okay, now I have this API. Let's build an interface on top of it that's easy to use, right? But it can really work either direction. Or it can start in the middle. You could say, hey, you know what? APIs really make sense to me. I'll start with the API. Here's what I know the UI is going to need. Let me build that out. Here's what I know the database is going to need. Let me build that all out here, and then I'll build these other two pieces afterward. You know, and so there's really no wrong answer, because like I was saying, in software, you can go back through and until you're on a production level site, there's always room to change. Right. And even when you're on the production level site, there's still room to change. Yeah. You know, you can always clone that environment, build up a staging environment, build up some sort of alternative dev environment, and go in a completely different direction and build some migrations. There's really no excuse for hesitating and not doing anything and wanting to just sit and think about it for 3 weeks. There's no reason to do that. You just start building something that's real. I mean, obviously not just anything, but, you know, I know there's going to be a UI piece. I know that there's going to be one form on the UI that people are going to have to enter some data, right? Build that form.
Start with an input box.
Start with one control. I need a label and an input box.
There you go.
Exactly. It's really just, and this is just something that frustrates me a lot about new developers coming on, is they just get paralyzed and they're so worried about, oh, I'm going to do the wrong thing. Yeah. Newsflash, you are going to do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
100%. I do the wrong thing. I mean, it's inevitable.
So good. No, that's so good. And that kind of segues too into this, because you were talking about this, about, to be, because you've got to have a hunger to learn if you're going to be in this industry, and if you're going to be good, you've got to have a hunger to learn. I felt like over the last it's been pretty good over the last couple of weeks. I would say, but before 2 weeks ago, I felt like I was in a good 2 month slump. I was losing confidence. I was pushing, code that, I would push code and then realize it made no sense. Right. And it was really it was a frustrating season. It was like 6 weeks there. And I had to go back and be like, okay, why do I feel like I'm struggling so much? You know what it was? I realized I stopped learning.
Yeah.
I am in the code. I am just relying on what I knew. I'm not looking up any documentation. I'm not going to figure out anything new. I'm not seeking deeper understanding into, whatever package that we're using in order to solve this. Even if it was just, hey, let me just make sure I understand this validation. I got away from learning, and subsequently I got in a slump, and I think that for so many developers, if you're kind of paralyzed and it's like, I don't know what to do. And even as a new developer, I think it comes down to, you got to learn. You got to learn. You got to have that hunger to learn. If you're just staring at it, trying to go, I just want to take only what I know and make this work, you're going to have a really hard time. There's going to be a gap, because most likely what you need to do is you need to go on Stack Overflow. You need to read some comments. They're not going to make any sense, Then you got to go find another blog that maybe makes a little bit more sense. And then you got to go maybe watch a video, and that's going to make those two things make even more sense, seeing it practically lived out. Then you got to go figure out what's different between all those three in your environment and what you have to tweak to make that work for you, right? I stopped doing that, and guess what? Your code quality goes down, And so that's what I would tell people as well. One of the things I learned as a developer is that if I'm truly stuck, like I really, really don't know, and I've tried to know and I don't, I'm asking the wrong question. I'm 100% asking the wrong question. So then it's important to go with the mentor, with somebody else, and say, okay, what is the right question to ask here? Because you're right, the answer is online somewhere. I promise you, it's in a repo, it's on a blog, it's in Stack Overflow, it's on YouTube, it's out there. The problem is, if you're not finding it, you're asking the wrong question. And that's one thing that I've learned in software. You want to be a good software engineer, learn how to ask the right question. Yeah. That will get you so far. So far,
I completely agree with everything you said there. I still learn every day. This is something that I tell people a lot, which is that the number one skill for any developer is not what languages you know. It's not what frameworks you know. It's do you know how to learn?
Yeah.
And learning how to learn is hard.
Yeah.
And it's a constant process, and it never ends. But the nice thing is exactly what you said. There's a million different resources out there in every kind of format you can imagine. I myself, I don't like watching videos. It always feels like there's so much fluff around what I'm trying to get to that I'm wasting my time. So I spend a lot of time reading Stack Overflow, reading the documentation of the technology that I'm using, blog posts and things like that, or example applications on GitHub. But there's nothing wrong with watching videos. Yeah. Watching videos is great if that's what makes sense to you.
Right.
If that's how you learn, if watching someone else do it is how you learn, then that is awesome, and that's how you should do it. Whatever. And there's no right way. The right way to learn is do it. You just have 100%. To keep doing it. You can't get caught up in, I'm spending too much time, learning on the videos. No, you're not. Like you are spending, if you are watching the video, getting something out of it, and you're able to produce code, that was time well spent.
100%. I love what you just said. A good example of that is we were working on a project together. We had to integrate the Quest PDF package.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Quest guys. Amazing product.
Yeah.
For spitting out PDFs. You went to the documentation, right? And you kind of read through a lot of the documentation. I went and watched them do a live code on YouTube, but we both figured it out, right? Like it was like, okay, we got to learn Quest PDF. You went to the documentation, you read up on it. I went to a video, I watched them live code it out, and the next day we were both coding in Quest, right? So yeah, you're gonna get there a little bit differently, which is fine. I don't even know I'm moving. We're like an hour in. I'm like, oh yeah, let me move this guy. I think it's gonna matter now. Anyway, sorry.
Are we really an hour in?
We're yeah, dude. We're yeah. We need to wrap up. We're getting close. But no, I love everything that you said there. And I completely agree. Yeah, it's whatever's best for you, but you've got to learn how to learn. You've got to understand how to ask the right questions. And that's where you should seek the understanding. And that's something for a lot of developers to learn. Don't just learn how to copy this function out and paste it in your code. Just, you got to learn how to ask. You have to learn how to frame the problem that you're solving. If you can't learn how to frame the problem that you're solving, you might be able to get the code to work, but you're never going to understand why it's working. And if you don't understand why it's working, one day you're going to break it because other things happen. And when you break it, you're not going to even know how to fix your own code because you never figured out exactly why you're solving the problem and how. And that's the biggest thing, I think. If you can get there, you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. I have a couple of closing thoughts. I think we hit on a great number of good topics. I think that the boot camp is a good idea for someone that wants to get into software development. I think that it would make my day if employers watched this and realized that they were doing their hiring all wrong.
Oh, man. Same.
But I think the most important thing that we said and really elaborated on is that software development is about learning. The tech space is always evolving. New people are coming in. They're bringing their perspective. They're making new tools. They're improving tools. They're changing them. You have to be willing to learn. And the second you think you're already on the path to destruction.
So
you're already getting yourself set up to get frustrated, to get stuck, and to really stop providing value. So that, to me, that's the most important takeaway from what we talked about, is that if you want to be a developer, you have to love to learn, and you can never stop.
100%. Always remember one thing: software development is hard. It's hard for everybody. It's never going to be easy. If you're waiting for the day for it to be easy before you go apply for the job, before you go do whatever, I'm sorry that day is never going to come. Such good advice, man. Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks with another guest. Man, we're looking forward to see you guys then, and we will see you guys later. Thank you.